Welcome to Rob Schmitt tonight. After Trump was elected in 2016, fact-checking became hugely popular in Washington. Ironically, one of the more brutally honest and certainly most transparent presidents the country has ever seen was inundated with fact-checking into almost every single statement he made by a media intent on destroying him and returning power to the establishment. The fact checks were designed to fool Americans into believing that politicians were honest before Trump came along. Probably the most ridiculous insinuation the media has ever come up with, and they've had some beauties. Trump was fact-checked on every single comment that he made, about every single comment, by a press corps that despised him for his bombastic personality and tendency to shine a light on their myriad failures. We learned the D.C. media prefer to see sophisticated liars in Washington, sleazy, corrupt, standard-issue D.C. operators with charm who preach about equity while selling your country out to the Chinese. The Washington Post kept a running tab of Trump's alleged lies to give you an idea how petty and politically loyal the Post has become to the permanent D.C. regime they're supposed to keep honest. The Post, currently spending its time falsely debunking truthful reporting on Joe Biden's heinous and possibly treasonous corruption, made time to log more than 30,000 Trump comments that they claim were dishonest or lies. The Post even fact-checked this moment in 2019 when the Clemson Tigers visited the White House after winning the national championship game. The Post had to let the readers know that the president was lying when he said this about the catering.
So we literally have, and I don't know, have they started eating and devouring, having? I wanted to see, so it was piled up a mile high.
Yes, that actually required a fact check. The Post fact check, at 2 inches each, 1,000 burgers would not reach 1 mile high. That was a Washington Post fact check. Rolling Stone went a bit further, uncovering the White House only bought 300 burgers and not 1,000. Welcome to the media under Donald Trump. Remembering that, let's move on to the Washington Post's resident fact checker, Glenn Kessler's latest piece on the Biden corruption scandal. Kessler is a fact checker so credible that during COVID he was busy fact checking anyone, including Senator Ted Cruz, who claimed that COVID came from the Wuhan lab. Great job, Glenn. His latest fact check, in full defense of the corrupt president he voted for, writes, "Here we go again, an explosive Hunter Biden laptop email needs context." Now, the piece is a full-throttle attempt to show that it was simply a coincidence that Biden fired a Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating the company that was paying his family millions of dollars. To be fair, Kessler makes a valiant effort, claiming that prosecutor Victor Shokin was corrupt himself, probably true, and that others in the Biden administration wanted Shokin gone, possibly true. But it's tough to debunk what is so obvious to the American people, and that's the struggle that the left is having right now. The truth is the Bidens pulled millions of dollars out of Ukraine, proven, and Joe fired the one man who was harassing his son's boss. In the piece, Kessler never ventures into why Biden has lied so much about Ukraine either. Take a listen to this.
I don't know what he was doing. I know he was on the board. I found out he was on the board after he was on the board, and that was it.
And I didn't realize he was on the board till after he'd been on the board. And at the same time, he has come forward and said it was a mistake on his part to be on the board.
You don't lie unless you got something to hide. Even a 5-year-old knows that. Both of those statements are provable lies. Biden was very familiar with Hunter's Ukraine business partner, a guy named Devon Archer. He actually met with Archer at the White House in April 2014. 2 weeks after that meeting, Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma. Hunter got $1 million salary. Joe and Hunter each got $5 million in cash. Too bad Glenn Kessler forgot those nuggets in his latest Biden vindication attempt, simply stating the Hunter Biden saga apparently can be endlessly recycled for maximum impact. That's the Washington Post. How sad is that? Or, Glenn, perhaps people are just interested in whether their president sold out his country to foreign actors for millions of dollars. Could be that, too. And these warriors for the regime are everywhere right now. Check out Biden's former press secretary with Congressman Jamie Raskin on Sunday, a guy that carries a lot of weight. This is in the wake of informant Gal Luft's indictment. He's the China informant. Really, really damaging stuff is what Gal Luft is insinuating here. Listen to this attempt by Jen Psaki.
How concerned are you that James Comer was the chairman of the committee, was knowingly, unknowingly working with, co-opted by a foreign agent?
I'm just concerned that the House Oversight Committee, which has a very proud history, they essentially have said, we will validate anybody who will say anything about the Bidens. And of course, they haven't laid a glove on President Biden.
I don't know how bad and how partisan it is right now. That's the ranking member of House Oversight, pretending that Gal Luft's indictment, this Israeli professor, that his indictment discredits his testimony and he's some kind of foreign operator. Now, Gal Luft might have his issues, might have done some bad dealings himself. But there is no explanation for the fact that Gal Luft and Joe Biden were being paid by the exact same Chinese communist actor, the exact same person, and how much credibility that lends to his claims, how much he would know being paid by the same person in an adversarial country, claiming that Biden was selling out his country to an adversarial nation. And they sit there and they both pretend that it all hinged on Gal Luft, and this indictment somehow makes it all go away, when Luft simply added another layer of confirmation to what Hunter's own laptop and Hunter's own business partners have already told us. In fact, Gal Luft is actually the loosest connection that we have to all of the staggering evidence of corruption from Joe and his son, Hunter, while they pretend he's the only connection. And they just say that, and they don't care. Journalist Matt Taibbi joins me now as we assess what's become desperate attempts to refute what has become very obvious here. Good to have you back on. The same people that warn constantly of dangerous disinformation are shoveling out mass quantities of it to protect Joe Biden. It's crazy to hear it from Jamie Raskin after everything that he said about disinformation. But the evidence is so staggering, and much of it is cold, hard emails and bank wires that they can't refute.
Well, this is not a new story, unfortunately. I mean, remember, this all began with the New York Post expose about Hunter Biden that was suppressed by Facebook and Twitter on the excuse that it was hacked and leaked materials. And almost immediately, that story became itself the subject of an active disinformation campaign by current and former intelligence officials who called it Russian disinformation. There were news agencies that knew that story was coming and still called it Russian disinformation, even though they had no evidence to support that. And now, after all the delays, the time in which we were convinced not to look at that story at all, they're essentially saying there's nothing to this. This is a big nothing burger. Don't pay attention again.
Right. And isn't it crazy to me that, I mean, the people that are trying to suppress speech because it might be disinformation, they couldn't even wait an hour to start doing it for nefarious reasons themselves. I think that that's really the wildest thing, because it's one thing if you're going to be you're going to try and be, so virtuous and say that we have to be able to suppress wrong things for the good of the people. You need to at least try to do it for, a couple days before you turn into the bad actor yourself.
Right. I was at Freedom Fest this weekend and shared a stage with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And, just within a couple of days after Joe Biden taking office, his White House was sending letters to social media companies asking to have his accounts taken down. Again, they didn't really wait any time at all to start doing that. Which suggests that they're very anxious to use these tools. That's what's very concerning about this.
And I agree, that is the scariest part, because that's just power. That's just the inherent nature of power. People want to control, and you have to do everything that you can to prevent that. House Oversight saying just late this afternoon, this is actually breaking news, that an FBI agent today confirmed key parts of IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley's testimony in a transcribed interview. So you have the FBI now confirming what the IRS is claiming, saying on the day of the Hunter Biden interview, federal agents were told to stand by, not approach Hunter Biden. They had to wait for his call. As a result of the change in plans, IRS and FBI criminal investigators never got to interview Hunter Biden as part of the investigation. It just adds to the wealth of information we have that prove that there was a solid attempt by the DOJ, and I think a successful attempt to keep this away from really getting into just how corrupt this administration is.
Right, and this would fit the pattern of a lot of political corruption cases where the response is actually worse than perhaps than the predicate crime. I mean, if you're interfering, if there's any truth to these allegations that somebody stepped in and told IRS agents, and clearly there's a whistleblower who is really saying this, who's represented by counsel and has come forward, that's an inexcusable act of corruption, far and above, not, overclaiming your exemptions, on your IRS return. And again, they're just preventing people from trying to get to the bottom of that story.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. Matt Taibbi, we appreciate it as always. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much for having me on.